Jaguar describes this F-Type Coupe as the most capable and involving car it's ever built. A fixed-top version of the F-Type Convertible, this model cements the Coventry brand's reputation as an ever more credible rival to Porsche, reviving memories of some of the company's legendary classic coupes. It handles, it goes, and it delivers. Until recently, the only place you could find a classic Jaguar sports car was in a museum. Today, you'll find one in your local Jaguar showroom. And this is it, the F-Type Coupe. You probably won't need me to tell you what this is. A fixed-top version of the F-Type Convertible the company launched to great fanfare in 2013. But you might want my help in understanding just why this model is so important. Indeed, why, from a driver's point of view, it's the most significant car the marque has made since the 60s. Back then, buyers expected legendary things from this Coventry company. Cars like the C-Type and the XK120, 140 and 150 models were fresh in the memory, paving the way for the E-Type sports car that arguably represented this maker's greatest hour. Sadly, that car proved to represent a pinnacle of performance it would take Jaguar another 50 years to replicate. But replicate it they finally did when open-top versions of this F-Type were launched. Here at last were signs that Jaguar could again make a proper sports car, even if the finished product still retained elements of the laid-back grand touring GT philosophy more familiar from the brand's modern-era performance cars. What, commentators like me wondered at the F-Type's original introduction, would a more focused, fixed-top version be like? A stiffer, sportier, even more dynamic thing? This coupe model, launched early in 2014, is our answer. It's rigid, rakish, and revs like a race car, whether you prefer V6 or V8 power. Depending on model, you can choose manual or quick-shift automatic transmission and either rear or all-wheel drive. This is, in short, a very complete, very special machine indeed, as we're about to find out. I can't remember ever approaching a drive in a Jaguar with a greater sense of anticipation. Like any true sports car, it looks poised and ready even when it's standing still. Drive me, it seems to say as you approach and the door handle springs out to greet you. Start me, it seems to shout once you're enveloped in the figure-hugging sports seats and angled towards the little copper-coloured starter button. Rev me, it seems to insist, as you fire the engine and a spectacular set of aural fireworks begin. Personally, I usually like my automotive sound effects to come from the engine rather than, as here, the tailpipes at the back, but even I have to admit that this car hums an addictive tune. For driver involvement, it really had to be that way, for the petrol power plants on offer aren't of the Porsche high-revving kind and weren't originally developed for sports car use. The supercharging means that the very considerable pulling power would normally be developed quietly but effectively very low in the rev range. Just what you'd want in an XF or XJ luxury saloon, and very impressive in an F-Type 2, provided it can here be accompanied by a howling crescendo as you power through the gears and the horizon spools towards you and fast forward. Which is precisely what you get, provided you've got Jaguar's clever active exhaust system fitted and activated. At the wheel of an F-Type equipped in this way, I can't think of any more effective way of annoying my neighbours. At least you won't be hanging around long enough for them to serve you with an ASBO notice. Even in the entry-level 340 PS V6 model, thanks to 450 Newton meters of torque, 60 from rest is just 5.1 seconds away en route to 161 miles an hour. Figures you can improve to 4.8 seconds and 171 miles an hour by opting for the V6S version. Either way, there's a choice of either a slick shifting 6-speed manual transmission or Jaguar's rapid fire quick shift auto gearbox with wheel mounted paddle shifters and 8 closely stacked sporting ratios, optimised to constantly keep the supercharged engines in the sweet spot of the power band. More powerful variants fitted with the quick shift box get a dynamic launch mode as standard so that you can indulge in Grand Prix style starts, the electronics firing you up the road in addictive fashion. If you're considering the V6 F-Type alternatives, there's certainly a strong case for upgrading to the V6S version. One of the key advantages of that model is that, provided you're happy with an auto gearbox, you can also get the option of all-wheel drive. This torque-on-demand system works with a clever IDD Intelligent Driveline Dynamics strategy to exploit the maximum performance potential of all that extra traction, while still keeping this car's natural rear-wheel drive character. Indeed, your all-wheel drive F-Type will always direct power to its rear wheels unless the IDD system detects a loss of traction and demands a proportion of torque to be directed frontwards. Where you'd think all-wheel drive would be really helpful would be in controlling the awesome potential of the 550 PS 5-litre supercharged V8-powered F-Type R model I'm trying here, and so it proves. This flagship variant puts out a prodigious 680 Nm of torque, which is one reason why there's no manual gearbox option at this level. As a result, 60 miles an hour is achievable in around 4 seconds en route to a top speed that you'd find would be limited to 186 miles an hour were you able to achieve it on a deserted autobahn or your own private runway. As with the V6S model, there's the option of either 2 or 4-wheel drive, and again, as with the V6S, a clever torque vectoring by braking system is provided. This imperceptibly brakes your inner wheels through the bends, finely adjusting the trajectory of the car for optimal handling. As a result, the available grip is always optimised, allowing you to carry more speed both into and out of corners. You really feel the effects of that on this top V8 F-Type R variant, for all that torque vectoring cleverness is combined with an electronic active differential that intelligently controls the amount of torque fed to each wheel. Slightly less sophisticated but almost as effective is the mechanical limited slip differential that performs much the same function on the V6S version. Either way, you should certainly be getting some impressive G-forces through the curves in this car. So yes, if you think a Jaguar sports car will be a softer, less focused option than, say, a rival Porsche 911, you really need to try this F-Type. Steering feel, of course, is key on a machine of this sort, something Jaguar has been able to deliver in spite of the decision to switch from an old-tech hydraulic to a new-tech, more efficient EPAS electronic system. The remote over-assisted response at the helm was always the thing that used to put me off sporting Jaguars. At last, the brand has sorted this issue with a system that, if not quite Porsche-like in its response, is now at least properly enthusiast-orientated, so that if you want to, you can really enjoy flinging this car about. If you're thinking of doing that, then you'll need to make the best use of the 3 very different driving modes that this car offers. There's a normal one, one for slippery surfaces, and a dynamic mode. Activate dynamic and the whole experience comes alive, both steering and shifting taking on an even more aggressive demeanour, with a weightier feel at the helm and super fast changes that also adapt themselves to road conditions, cornering and your driving style. At the same time, throttle response is sharper and there's a slight loosening of the stability system's safety net. If you're in a V6S model or this F-Type R V8, the damping will sharpen up too, thanks to an adaptive dynamics system that controls body movement, roll and pitch. It's well worth having, and you can tweak any of the individual dynamic system elements with configurable menus hidden away in this touchscreen infotainment system, enabling you to specifically set up your F-Type to your own personal preferences, much as a race team would set up a race car. On this top V8 model, you also get a dynamic eye display with G-force readings and lap times. So, ultimately, what does it all mean? Have Jaguar really built a world beater here? Ultimately, it depends on what you want. Though this stiffer, sharper coupe model is much more of a driver's car than its convertible stablemate, it isn't the best track car in its class, which is fine because it doesn't necessarily need to be. The few potential buyers who will regularly be pounding around on circuit days will be better off in a Lotus Exige or a Porsche. Choose an Exige or a 911 if you want a car in this class that'll really make you feel like Fernando Alonso. This car is engineered primarily for roadway thrills and a few roadway scares in the case of this almost frighteningly fast supercharged V8 F-Type R model. Whichever variant you choose, it's nice to be able to report that you should find yourself also enjoying it even when you're not driving hard, thanks to a suspension setup that eases you over bumpy or broken surfaces, giving the car a beautiful point-to-point flow, whether in town or on the highway. No one does this kind of thing better than the engineers at Jaguar. Engaging, precise, intuitive and alive, the definitive sports coupe. That's the way that Jaguar describes this car, and for once, the marketing rhetoric isn't too far from the mark, underlining the Coventry company's determination to go its own way and offer something different. As with the convertible model, the shape's an interesting one, defined once more by what are described as heart lines. Get beyond the muscular clamshell bonnet with its signature power bulge, then turn your attention to this bold, angular Jaguar front grille, and you'll pick up the first of these in the blade dissecting the shark-like gills that dominate both front corners of the car. It's a crease that runs along the top of the wing, defining its shape, then flowing on into the door before gracefully disappearing rearwards. Here you pick up a second heart line that swells out to form the muscular rear haunch before sweeping dramatically around a sharply proportioned tail section emphasised by wraparound LED lamps and an active rear spoiler that raises at 70 miles an hour, then lowers to fit flush when the speed drops below 50 miles an hour. Look down here and you can identify the engine on offer. If this were a V6 model, you'd have twin centre tailpipes, as opposed to the signature quad outboard mounted exhausts fitted to this faster V8. This F-Type R is further distinguished by its gloss black front vanes, flat side sill extensions and unique window trim. It's the third heartline, though, that really defines the distinctive look of this coupe body style. You've got this dramatic cabin rearward sweeping roof profile. Providing an unbroken silhouette, it aims to highlight the visual drama of the tapered cabin nestled between these powerful rear haunches. There's also a lovely, unique side window graphic that's there to accentuate the compactness of the car and the roof profile. If you've opted for an all-wheel drive version, distinguishing touches include a deeper bonnet power bulge and more distinctive vents. Details like these add the finishing touches to what is a unique piece of penmanship, one that Jaguar's Director of Design Ian Callum says he's inspired by every time he sees it. As usual, the really significant elements are those you can't see. There's no central B-pillar because the structure here, braced instead by high-strength alloy beams that run from front to rear, doesn't need it. The result is a platform that's nearly 80% stiffer than that of the F-Type Convertible and the most torsionally rigid production car that Jaguar has ever built. Yes, even with this huge panoramic glass roof panel fitted. The entire structure is bonded and riveted rather than welded, and these side panels are single-piece aluminium pressings. It's all suggestive of lightweight, a goal that perhaps would have been realised without the hefty supercharged engines that must reside up front. These offset many of the weight gains created through the high-tech structure, creating a car 300 to 400 kilograms heavier than its direct Porsche rivals. But then this F-Type Coupe offers so much more of an experience, something you realise the first time you grasp one of the lovely pop-out door handles, there to provide what the brand calls a mechanical handshake, and take a seat inside. The door sills aren't excessively wide or deep, so you can climb in quite gracefully and lure yourself into a focused, enveloping cockpit that sits you 20mm lower than you would be in an XK and curves itself around your body. It's certainly very driver-orientated, especially in this F-Type R model with its lovely winged and prominently side-bolstered performance seats. As in the convertible version, the two front occupants are separated by this prominent grab handle, which sweeps down from the top of the centre console and on automatic models wraps around behind this joystick-shaped sports shift gear selector. In contrast to other Jaguar models, there's no rotary gear shift controller here. Good. It's all symptomatic of the design team's determination to create something very different. An intimate place where luxury is not allowed to supersede purpose. Over your shoulder, the view is framed by an oval rear window that references the old E-Type but restricts your vision enough to make the standard rear parking sensors essential. You could go further and pay extra for a reverse parking camera, but that comes with the aesthetic blemish of a camera mounting blister on the boot lid. On a car this beautiful, little details like that matter. It's not perfect, of course. The paddle shift selectors are rubberized plastic when they should be metallically fashioned. The steering column stalks feel a bit cheap, and there's one of those fiddly electronic handbrake switches. I don't think the typical sports car leg straight out driving position will suit everyone either, but the copper-coloured starter button is nice. So is the way the washer jets are mounted on the wipers to clear a murky screen so much more effectively. I also like the small diameter 3-spoke leather trimmed wheel. It's got Alcantara trim here on this V8 version, which frames a brace of analog instruments separated by a TFT information screen. Anything you want to know that it can't tell you will probably be covered by this car's much improved in-control touch infotainment system with its 8-inch colour touchscreen, text-to-voice messaging, in-control apps and 3D navigation displays. On this F-Type R variant, it's even more high-tech thanks to the inclusion of this dynamic eye display system there as part of a standard configurable dynamics feature that allows the driver to define which characteristics are altered when dynamic mode is selected. Dynamic Eye includes a G-force meter and can show you a lap time readout, plus you can monitor throttle, steering and brake inputs on the display screen. Fortunately, the infotainment display hasn't been further overburdened by also having to be the main point of control for the ventilation. Though you've got graphics for that here, the main functions for it are separated out into the 3 chunky heater dials that sit beneath. Now, talking of climate control, at first glance there don't seem to be many cabin air vents. That's because 2 of them are hidden away on top of the centre console, rising automatically to clear the screen and cool the cabin only when needed. Lovely. As with a Porsche Cayman, but unlike a Porsche 911 or a Jaguar XK, there are no occasional use rear seats for children, just a shallow cubby and a pair of coat hooks. That's a slight disappointment for me as a family man. Talking of practicality, apart from this bin at shoulder height, the one I just mentioned between the seats, you've also got an armrest cubby and twin cup holders. The glove box is a decent size, but the door bins are almost useless. Out back, this F-Type Coupe gives you substantially more luggage space than you'd get in its convertible counterpart, up to 407 litres as opposed to 196 litres. That's a bit less than the combined front and rear cargo area offered by a rival Porsche Cayman, probably because of the fact that due to the location of the rear axle, the boot here has to remain quite shallow. That said, it's considerably bigger than that provided by a Porsche 911 and easily large enough for 2 sets of golf clubs. When the F-Type Convertible was launched, some were surprised that its pricing was so far above that of Porsche's Boxster open-top and Cayman Coupe models. In contrast, if you approach this F-Type Coupe with that kind of expectation, you'll be far less disappointed. This car, you see, has a model-for-model cost around £5,500 below that of its convertible stablemate. The standard V6 quick-shift auto version is priced at just over the £51,000 mark, pretty much bang on what you'd pay for a rival Porsche Cayman S PDK. The V6S quick-shift auto variant, meanwhile, requires a further £9,000 from you, pitching it at just over the £60,000 mark, not much more than you'd pay for a rival Cayman GTS PDK. Jaguar's marketeers have obviously done their homework. The V6 models offer a 6-speed manual gearbox option that'll save you £1,800 over the cost of the equivalent quick-shift automatic version. If you're happy with the auto and looking at the V6S model, then you've also the option of paying a premium of just under £5,000 for all-wheel drive. Here, though, I've been testing an F-Type Coupe with loftier aspirations, the V8 supercharged F-Type R flagship. Prices here start at around £87,000, and again you've the option of finding a premium of just under £5,000 more if you want the all-wheel drive variant. This kind of pricing seems to have been pitched with Porsche in mind. 2- and 4-wheel drive versions of the German company's rival 911 Carrera S PDK model offer near identical levels of performance for much the same kind of money. Are there other market alternatives to models in the F-Type Coupe range? In truth, not that many. If you were looking at the V6S version that probably the majority of likely customers will target, the same kind of money would, it's true, buy you more performance in a BMW M4 or a Mercedes C63 AMG. But at the end of the day, what you'd be getting for that outlay would simply be a very nice and very fast BMW 4 Series Coupe or Mercedes C-Class. As for this V8R model, well, yes, you could save around £8,000 and go slightly faster in a rival Nissan GTR. But that would mean taking the very brave step of spending around £80,000 on a Nissan. This is a Jaguar. For most owners, the difference will be important. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is an F-Type Coupe that you really, really want, then you'll be needing to know exactly what's included for your not insubstantial outlay. And the answer is quite a lot, though I was a little disappointed to find that on the entry-level standard V6 variant, it was necessary to pay extra for things like auto headlamps and wipers, cruise control and heated seats. To be fair though, you do get 18-inch alloy wheels, sports suspension, a sports exhaust, bifunction HID xenon headlamps, rear parking sensors, sports seats with electric height and recline adjustment, a leather-trimmed paddle shift steering wheel and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. Plus, there are all the functions accessible from the in-control touch infotainment screen. Bluetooth phone compatibility, a 6-speaker 180-watt sound system with DAB digital radio and USB aux-in and iPod connectivity, plus various in-control apps and the satellite navigation system that would be a pricey option with most rivals. To this, the only item I'd insist you add is the switchable active sports exhaust. And maybe if I wanted to do track days, the 19-inch wheels you'll need as part of the performance braking system. Both are perhaps good reasons to find the extra for the V6S model that includes both these things as standard, along with adaptive dynamics switchable dampers so that you can set the ride to match the road you're on, launch control to fire you off the line, a limited slip differential to aid corner turn-in, and full leather seats. All that and another 40 PS beneath the bonnet should convince many waverers that it's a V6S coupe model they really want. Unless, of course, they're fortunate enough to be able to stretch to this F-Type R model. Here there's a range of R-branded aesthetic embellishments inside and out, plus 20-inch wheels through which peep the calipers of a super performance braking system. You get all the assistance Jaguar thinks you'll need too to keep 550 PS in check. That means features like a configurable dynamic system, stiffer R-tuned suspension and an electronic active differential, plus torque vectoring by braking for even faster response through the turns. For the F-Type Coupe range as a whole, there are also two uprated versions of the in-control touch infotainment screen. A standard version that more than doubles the incorporated Meridian audio system's output to 380 watts, and the in-control touch plus package that increases that figure to a thumping 770 watts of surround sound. Enough to drown out the exhaust? Probably not. As for other options, well, we'll start with a couple of do's and don'ts. Do try and stretch to this huge panoramic glass roof which floods the cabin with light, though unfortunately doesn't have the magic feature you get in a Mercedes SL of being able to lighten or darken at the press of a button. Don't bother with the powered tailgate. Honestly, could you really not live without one of those? On a slightly more mundane level, most V6 owners will want the extra cost visibility pack, which includes LED daytime running lights, a heated windscreen, rain sensing wipers and auto headlamps that also automatically dip themselves at night in the face of oncoming traffic. For those owners wanting to make their F-Type look a little more exclusive, there's an optional Sport Design Pack, which adds a package of uniquely styled body parts, splitters, sills and venturi, plus a fixed rear spoiler. Finally, there's the pricey option of ceramic brakes, the ones I have here, though if you're likely to be driving fast enough to get the benefit of those on a public road, then you might as well simply stop by the nearest police station and give yourself up. Earlier, I mentioned the possibility of adding various apps that can come as part of the in-control touch infotainment package. Some of these really are very clever. The Remote Premium app allows you to use your smartphone for things like checking how much fuel is in your tank, whether the windows are closed and whether the alarm has been activated. It also allows you to remotely lock or unlock your car and reset its alarm from anywhere in the world. There's also a beep and flash feature to help drivers find their car in crowded car parks. My wife would love that. With this app, you can even start the engine remotely so that, for example, you can get the car warming itself up nicely outside your front door before your journey begins. There's also an in-control secure option I definitely want, which provides proactive vehicle monitoring. This means that should your car be stolen, a tracking service can more easily work with law enforcement agencies to recover it. Jaguar's in-control technologies also relate to safety. Should you be involved in an accident, the car's integrated telematics module will automatically call the emergency services and notify them of your vehicle's location. As for more conventional safety features, well, you won't find the sheer depth of electronic trickery that would be available for this kind of money in, say, a BMW or Mercedes sports car. There's enough, though, to properly compete with what's provided by a more direct rival, Porsche. That means inclusion of a smart airbag system, tyre pressure monitoring, the usual electronic assistance for traction and braking, and an electronic stability control system with a track mode that loosens the reins but cuts in extremis. There's also the option of a blind spot monitoring system that stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another driver. This setup can also be ordered with a reverse traffic detection system that'll also help when you're reversing blindly out of a parking space. So to the costs of running this car, which are going to take on some significance if you're one of those who'll have to stretch a little deeper than might have been expected to afford an F-Type in the first place. It isn't, after all, the value proposition its predecessor, the E-Type, once was. That car cost around £2,000 back when it was launched in 1961, which equates to around £36,000 today, around half the cost of many of the F-Types that'll typically be rolling out of British showrooms. But there's no point in dwelling on that. The market's moved on and Jaguar's entitled to charge the way the Germans do. providing it can match their technology. In terms of efficiency, you might wonder about that. For a start, all that this car's much trumpeted aluminium underpinnings do is to make up for the prodigious weight of the supercharged engines used under the bonnet, or almost make up for them anyway. Typically, an F-Type Coupe is still around 300 to 400 kilograms heavier than its comparable Porsche counterpart. On top of that, if you know anything about big capacity supercharged petrol engines, you'll know that they're thirsty beasts. It's not a promising start if you're at all concerned over likely running costs. To be fair, given what they had to work with, the Coventry engineers have done quite well here, sensibly building in a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. This alone improving those fuel figures by 5%. Then there's the EPAS electric power steering, which alone has improved CO2 returns by around 4 grams per kilometre. As a result, the base 340 PS V6 model with manual transmission manages 33.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 199 grams per kilometre of CO2. For comparison, a direct rival Porsche Cayman S manual model delivers 32.1 miles to the gallon and 206 grams per kilometre. So Jaguar has somehow kept this car very competitive. The returns of the 380 PS V6S model are just as close to those of its competitors. With manual transmission, it returns 32.9 miles to the gallon and 203 grams per kilometre. Inevitably, perhaps, the figures of this F-Type R V8 model, which manages 26.4 miles to the gallon and 255 grams per kilometre, don't look quite so impressive, being some way behind those of a rival Porsche 911 Carrera S PDK. Having said all of that, no one is going to expect a Jaguar with performance able to nudge up towards 200 miles an hour to be in any respect a frugal thing. And as with any proper performance sports car, if you manage to get anywhere near the manufacturer's quoted figures in regular real-world motoring, you probably shouldn't have bought the thing in the first place. If you want to make yourself feel good about the cost of running the V8 model, then the fact that it'll cost around 30% less to run than, say, Aston Martin's V8 Vantage or Maserati's GT 4.7 V8 may be enough to salve your green conscience. It'll also help that you get quite a large 72-litre fuel tank, 10% bigger than the one provided in, say, a Porsche 911, and large enough to make a 500-mile driving range theoretically possible on a long-distance trip. What else? Well, you might also want to bear in mind that this top V8 version will cost you no more to insure than the base V6 model. All F-Type variants are rated at a top-of-the-shop Group 50. The bigger issue will probably be residual values. And the way things are looking right now, there isn't a lot to choose between Porsche and Jaguar in that respect. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Then there's maintenance. Jaguar offers a servicing package over either 3 or 5 years that's very well worth specifying. Finally, if you want to justify your purchase of a supercharged, petrol-powered Jaguar sports car to green bearded friends, you could point out to them that half the content of the bodywork of this car comes from recycled metal, and that its structure is exclusively riveted and bonded, a manufacturing process that emits up to 80% less CO2 than would be necessary in creation of an ordinary car's steel structure. There are, it seems, more dynamic ways to be green. The F-Type Coupe takes all that was great about the convertible version and builds on it. So you get a stiffer chassis, a more affordable asking price, and a more focused feel. The result is a very special car indeed. Even if you can only stretch to a V6 version. After all, compared to a rival Porsche Cayman S, Jaguar has bought us a machine that's arguably better looking, unarguably better equipped, more powerful and endowed with a greater sense of occasion inside and out. While it won't match the Porsche's delicacy of response at the limit, the F-Type Coupe looks as if it's got its chief competitor's measure in enough areas that count to really give the German brand something to worry about. Indeed, it's hard to see how Jaguar could have done a lot better with this model. If potential owners had approached the Coventry company with a wish list, you can't imagine that it would have emerged much differently. At launch, you could have griped about the lack of all-wheel drive and a manual gearbox, plus maybe the clunky infotainment system, but all that's now been sorted. Are there remaining issues? Well, perhaps this car could be a little lighter and this V8 version a little more efficient. That's about it. Other than that, this is a British sports car to be proud of. As I said when I reviewed the convertible version, I don't think it'll suit many who associate performance motoring from this brand with XJS or XK models. Buckle such people up behind the wheel and they're liable to be a little taken aback. No matter, Jaguar needed to find a younger, more demanding, hungrier audience for its sports cars. It needed to convince people like me that here and now, in this market, at this time in history, it could be great again. Mission accomplished.